Time for another edition of Sharp or Square. Chad Millman, CCO of the Action Network. All odds provided by DraftKings. Rocky start, but you know what? I've had a lot of turbulent flights that land perfectly, so I don't care. I'm not bothered by it.
You wear it well. The pressure, it doesn't get to you. You wake up in the morning and you're like, this is a day for opportunity.
So my first one is Pittsburgh plus 2.5 at Vegas. Here's why. So there's a lot of elements of Pittsburgh I really like. And then there's one offensive line play. Kenny Pickett, I think he's regressed. But I do think there's a sense of urgency. Literally his coordinator, offensive coordinator for the Steelers, booed at the stadium, ripped unmercifully. Mike Tomlin addressed it. I do think you'll get a fairly inspired effort. I do feel that facing Cleveland's defense, which is really good, and the Niners defense, which is spectacular, to the Raiders defense feels like a slumber party. I'm going to take the points. Pittsburgh, overall good roster. And I think I think a lot of Kenny Pickett's issues, he may have faced two of the top 4 defenses in the league. I'm going to take Pittsburgh plus the point, sharp or square.
I feel like everything I say right now is fraught with tension because the stress levels are so high about turning around the Blazin 5. But I'm going to tell you right
Not my
now,
stress levels.
it's so high. There's so much pressure right now. I need you to be listening to me. The wise guys are all over the Raiders here, Colin. Like this line opened at Raiders plus 1.5 on Sunday night. And immediately, even before the Monday night game with the Browns, the wise guys were betting this game. It's now Raiders minus 2.5. And I can give you a bunch of trends that would actually say, you know what, in this spot, at this number, you kind of do want to back the Steelers. But here's the problem. We can all agree that the Chicago Bears right now are the biggest train wreck of a team in the NFL. The past 24, 48 hours have not been kind to the Chicago Bears. They've had 3 red zone trips in the first 2 weeks of the season. There's one team that has made fewer red zone trips than the Chicago Bears. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers. This rush defense, going to the other side of the ball, is not very good right now. We saw it with Nick Chubb before he was out. He was on his way to 100 yards in the first half. His backup broke a big run, had more than 100 yards. So I'm a little concerned about this Steelers defense right now as well. So the wise guys are on the Raiders.
I like the Chargers plus 1 at Minnesota for a lot of reasons. One, I think they're a much better team, quarterback advantage. Now, between Mike McDaniel and Vrabel, huge coaching edge over Brandon Staley. I don't feel it's quite that much of a disadvantage this week. I think Vrabel's one of the top 5 coaches in the league, and I think McDaniel may be, along with Kyle Shanahan and McVay, Andy Reid, the smartest guy, the Ivy League guy. I think this is the entire organization. This is the biggest Charger game outside of a playoff game that I remember. This is a better team with a better roster. And the truth is, the Vikings run game with Cam Akers could be good. It's not now. It'll become very Kirk Cousins dependent. I'm going to take the Chargers plus the point, sharp or square.
This is a total pro Joe game. And what I mean by that is the higher number of bets are on the Chargers. When you have a higher number of bets, that's usually the square side. That's the public. The money, the professionals, the wise guys, are on the Vikings. And so you're kind of being square here. But I will tell you, there's no model that anyone is running that says, oh, yeah, there's an advantage with Minnesota. Both teams are 0-2. Both teams have shown some promise and some really bad performances. I would say that with the Vikings, Kirk Cousins has been on fire, right? He was amazing in both of his games. His completion percentage is amongst the top 3 in the NFL. His total yards, his QB rating, his yards per attempt. He's having a great year. Justin Herbert might have one of the best rosters in the NFL offensively, and they cannot win. Remember last week we had a conversation? You were talking about the Chargers against the Titans, and I'm like, look, I know everything you're going to say about the Titans, but they have Mike Vrabel, a better coach, like you just said, and it's a coaching mismatch with Brandon Staley. I beg you to take the Titans. All of that is still true, right? Brandon Staley is just not a very good NFL head coach, and he doesn't imbue his team with confidence, and that leads to miscues. That leads to bad play calling. So to me, I'm either playing Minnesota or I'm passing. At this point, I haven't done a bet on Minnesota, but the wise guys do not like the Chargers here.
All right, Buffalo at Washington. What's the current line? All of our odds provided by DraftKings, 5.5-ish.
The last I saw was 6.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why I like Washington. I know I'm a square. The weather that is forming, it could be a mess. A mess. Every year there is a team that we look up about week 6 or 7 and go, they're kind of good. So Sam Howell, last 3 starts, 95 passer rating. 2 good receivers, excellent back, front, defensive front's the strength of the team. Buffalo still can't run, can struggle to protect the quarterback. Don't overview the Raider win. Raiders are a pretty average team. Better at home average team. I think Washington is the New York Giants of last year that you look up and go, it's kind of a good team with some really good players. They've drafted. We think of Dan Snyder. We think hot mess. They've done a pretty good job in the draft. I think I would take Washington in really sloppy weather in the points, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. Wise guys are on the Commanders. The line actually at DraftKings right now is 6.5. It's been basically in that 6.5 range. Honestly, since before week 2, that was the look ahead line, was Buffalo -6. The wise guys are on it. I think they too feel like Sam Howell might be a player. He's made some throws. He's stuck around. The game plan.
Hey,
last week,
Greg Cosell told me today. I said I comped him with Baker Mayfield. He said, "Oh, he's more athletic, and really, when he plants and throws, has a stronger arm." Baker Mayfield was a number 1 pick. Like, Sam can play a little.
He's very confident, right? There was a throw last weekend where he had a check down right in front of him to the running back, and instead he launched it to Terry McLaurin in the end zone, and he knew he was throwing into coverage, but he trusted his receiver, he trusted his placement, and he got the ball into the end zone, and they ended up winning that game. And you've also seen like what Eric Bieniemy has done with that team, that game plan in the second half. A lot of it was throwing screens and putting Howell in a position to succeed, and then the Broncos not being able to make defensive adjustments. And so I think the wise guys are starting to believe in Sam Howell. And I do think the weather, look, it could be, tropical rain up and down the East Coast. So I do think that's playing a factor.
So I am loath to take big numbers. I don't like to. I've never liked to. But Kansas City's defense is really good, getting better. Young defenses are prone to this. Chicago's had a noisy, messy week. We have moved to stage 5 of failing quarterbacks. Blame. It gets really ugly. There's coaching issues, coordinator quits, everybody's finger pointing. So Kansas City has played really 2 poor games as they try to get their receiving core right. And could have won both and did win one over a good Jacksonville team. I hate big numbers, but if there's a game that looks like 30-7, like there's one every couple of weeks, I think I would take the Chiefs -12.5, and I know it's square, but I feel comfortable with it. Sharp or square?
Well, yeah, of course it's square, but I can't say it's square in that, like, I'm just checking the numbers here to make sure of how square it really is. I can't say that it's square like, okay, the wise guys are all jumping on the Bears right now. They're not. I think a lot of people are concerned about the Bears, and normally they would jump all over the Bears at +12.5 because it's such a big number. And look, throughout his career, you put Patrick Mahomes in this kind of situation and he does not cover because the numbers for Patrick Mahomes as a favorite are always so big, and the bigger the number, the harder it is to cover. Right now, 72% of the bets, about 60% of the money. So what I will tell you is that while not all of the money, a sort of ratio of more money than tickets on the Bears, there is enough money on the Bears to make me think there's some wise guy syndicates that are playing the Bears because the number is so big. But you're not You're not wrong about the Bears. Like yesterday, I'm from Chicago, and immediately when the news about the defensive coordinator resigning came up, I was on a text chain with my buddies, even though I was in a very important business meeting, and we were all sort of apoplectic about it. And then Nathan Peterman was cut, and my immediate response was, "Oh my God, the Bears are in such bad shape that they decided cutting Nathan Peterman would be the perfect smokescreen to distract everybody from the fact things are just terrible for the Bears." So I can't blame you for wanting to bet the Chiefs here. I would not play this game. I think there's too many things that are sort of systemically wrong to feel comfortable putting a bet on this game.
So again, this is a week where I like some favorites. Miami -6.5, 7 I'd pass, 7.5 I may consider Denver, but at -6.5, a home opener for a team that has played a really talented Charger team on the road and a very good defensive team in New England. Now you have a Denver team in which Greg Cosell said today they are missing open looks. The defense has been incredibly discouraging. The O-line is new. Cohesion's an issue. Russell has been awful in the second half. He's bad off script. And I had an executive in the league who I trust in personnel, and he said, "Colin, I know you love Russell." He said this 2 weeks ago. He said, "This is it. This is what he is now. You can script him up. There's no juice beyond that." And I think Miami could be the best coached team in the league, head coach to top coordinator. I'd lay the -6.5. 7 probably stay away, but half a point matters. Miami sharper square.
You're being really square. I hate to say it. And listen, I hate asking you to do this.
Yeah.
When you're on the kind of streak that you're on, but this is how you fight your way back, is you make hard choices. You're a very, very successful person in every aspect of your life. Your wife is beautiful. You're a magnate. You're a media magnate.
Yes.
You're a radio audio legend. Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You've had to make hard choices before. And I hate asking you to do this. But this is like the biggest pros Joe's game of the week, right? You're never going to get higher inflation on Miami than you are right now, and you're never going to get more value on the Broncos than you are right now. Everything about this screams you got to take the Broncos, and everything you're saying about Russell Wilson is right. Look, as soon as they get to the second half and everyone else has made adjustments, he looks lost. He looks old. You could see it last week in that game against Washington. He had that fumble and the ball was right in front of him. And it was reminiscent of that very famous photo of Y.A. Tittle when he's on his knees and there's blood dripping down from his head. And he just sort of looks like an old football player, right? That's sort of what that felt like to me. He just sort of, he wasn't there. Like, he definitely is not the same player, and it's a bummer. But the Broncos have also been one of the unluckiest teams in the NFL. And I don't say that sort of as a broad generic term. On Action Network, we actually have something called the luck rankings, which categorizes the sort of inconsistent events that can impact a game and normalizes what should have happened, right? If you take out turnovers, weird circumstances, etc. The Broncos are the second most unluckiest team. And this is sort of the biggest luck gap that we have, second biggest luck gap that we have. Also, one thing I'll say, Sean Payton, after Mike Tomlin, second most profitable coach as an underdog the past 20 years. So if I am going to bet on a team in a situation in which they are 0-2, I'm probably going to bet on Sean Payton in this scenario. One more stat I'll give you. Teams playing their first home game in week 2. So we're talking about, the first home game in week 3. So we're talking about the Dolphins here. When they are a favorite of 3 or more in the last 20 years, 12, 21, and 2. So I don't like the number. I don't like the spot. I don't like the circumstances, but I don't like having to tell you to do this right now.
Okay, now we do. I ask you a game that I haven't a strong definitive opinion, then you give me one I should bet. The one I'm fascinated with is New Orleans at Green Bay. Packers now -1.5. So a lot of hand holding so far with Jordan Love, David Bakhtiari, Christian Watson. I think it's sort of unfair to jump to any conclusions on Jordan without Christian Watson. He is their track star. He is their deep threat. When he's on the field, it changes coverage. Bakhtiari is a top 5 pass blocking left tackle. So health, this could be a game time bet based on health. But this is our, where would you go with this bet of the week? I'm just interested in your thoughts.
So I lean Saints. I was kind of hoping that the number might float a little bit higher. Today's actually been a pivotal day for this game. It's been sitting at +2 for the Saints all week. And today the wise guys came in and started betting on the Saints. So now the number's about 1.5. So I feel like I missed the window a little bit. The Saints, I think right now are probably a little bit of a better team. I've been really impressed with Jordan Love. Like he has made some throws and taken the shots that he needed to take, even when it hasn't worked out. But this team also gave up a 12-point lead to an Atlanta Falcons team that is not a dynamic offense. As much as we love Bijan Robinson, he's not a dynamic offense. And I think the Saints defense is better than the Falcons defense. I think Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder. So and also, by the way, the stat I just gave you about the Dolphins playing their first game at home in week 3 applies to the Packers as well. So I lean Saints here.
Okay, and give me a bet I missed that you really like. I'm going to guess it's Baltimore Indy.
It's close. It's down to that or the Texans.
A lot of people like Indy, but so you like the Texans +9.5? O-line's all beat up.
I do, but apparently Laramie Tunsil's playing, so I like that. I think that C.J. Stroud of the rookie quarterbacks has actually played better than all of them.
Hasn't thrown a pick.
Yeah, no interceptions. He's making the plays that they're in front of him. Even in garbage time, like you still have to make the plays, right? So their problem has been a 17% conversion percentage in the red zone. Now the Jags defense isn't very good. The Jags are also without Cam Robinson still. Their offensive line is not performing the way it should be. They've underperformed. They beat the Colts, 31-21, but I watched that whole game. It was not a good game. And they did not play their best. They got lucky in that game. And then they had a chance to beat a hobbled Chiefs team. And you look at the stats on that Chiefs game, the Chiefs averaged 6 yards per play. They had 400 total yards. They got some bad penalties. They would have blown the Jaguars out. So I'm a little nervous about this team that is a huge, huge favorite. I think it's a bad spot for them. So the wise guys are on the Texans. Yeah,
and I thought about this, but I was worried about the O-line play. It's a division game. That 9.5 points in division is crazy. And I will say this about rookie quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud, I think, has leadership qualities, and he doesn't make mistakes. So far, there's limitations on what they can all do, but that's what gets Justin Fields or Kenny Pickett. It's the mistakes. He's not making any mistakes. They play between the 30s, right? Like it's between the 30s football. So that was one I figured. I figured that. I can't go with Gardner Minshew because I think Baltimore's really good, but I do sense the dogs are heavy on the Colts this week.
The wise guys are on the Colts, and that line probably was at 8.5 for most of the week. It got down to 7.5. And it's because the wise guys are coming in. And I think they've actually been impressed with the Colts team, and they've been really well coached. And I also think you're buying the Ravens really, really high right now. And so, but you got to think about this. In week 1, the Ravens beat the Texans. They didn't dominate the Texans. The Texans were in that game the entire time. The red zone is what caused problems for the Texans. And you're playing a quarterback who is a rookie. It's week 1. Those are the things to be expected. But I was all over the Texans +10 in that game. And I never felt like I didn't have a shot to cover in that game until it was over. And then last week, they played a team in Joe Burrow that he's clearly hobbled. So there's a lot of inflation on the Ravens and people sort of overvaluing what they've done so far in the season. So I think that's why you're seeing a little bit of love for the Colts. But I understand why you wouldn't want to play it because Minshew's, he can be a scary gamble.